morning, everyone. Good morning, and welcome back. Welcome back to the PorscheCooled Podcast. My name is Michael Barth. Welcome back if you've been here before, and welcome if you haven't. This is Owner's Stories today, and Owner's Stories is the episode where I chat to fellow Porsche owners, fellow Porsche enthusiasts around the world. We talk about, how you came about getting your first 911, when you first got into Porsche, all the fun things that we like chatting about. Think of it as a cars and coffee, I guess. Think of it as just connecting online with, fellow enthusiasts, fellow Porsche friends, as I call it. So that's what we're going to do today, Owner's Stories. And today we have Nick, and Nick is from Melbourne in Australia. So from not my hometown, but my home country. Everyone, you guys know I'm from Australia. Nick and I have never met, but Nick and I have chatted on and off through YouTube and through Instagram over the years. He supported my YouTube channel, Michael Barth, in the early days. He was always commenting and commenting on my videos, which was fantastic. It's going to be hard to get all this into 1 hour, this episode, because Nick has owned quite a few Porsches. His current one is not his first one, so we'll try and get through everything. We'll try and cover everything that you guys like to hear about. But like I said, I haven't said it yet, but like I always say, if you want to know more about Nick's car, if you want to know more about his Porsche experience, every owner's story, most people are on Instagram. Nick is on Instagram at architect_driving. Go and check out his car. He also posts lots of great images of other cars as well, so check that out. Give him a follow, and let's support the PorscheCooled community. All right, let me get Nick. I'm a little bit early. I've got another 15 minutes, but I'm just going to set up here. I'm going to get Nick on the line, and we'll start talking all things Porsche. Okay, welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to Owner Stories. In the intro, I forgot to mention, actually, this is number 24. So we're up to 24 Owner Stories. And today I'm looking forward to this one, actually, because it's with Nick. And as I said in the intro, Nick and I have sort of chatted a lot over the years. Nick was a supporter of my YouTube channel when it first started, watching the videos and commenting on the videos, which always helps when you're starting a YouTube channel. But Nick's joined us from Melbourne. Hi, Nick. How are you?
Very well. Thanks, Michael. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm glad you had some time to do this. I know you're busy, and we sorted this out over the last couple of weeks to get a good time that we can record. And I said to the listeners in the beginning of in the intro, actually, that I want to get through most of the cars that you've had, because you've had a pretty good collection of Porsches, and I think the listeners will get a really good overview of certain models from hearing your story. And I think that's what people like to hear, especially people who are not into the brand, or people who have just got into the brand and are looking for different variants. I think it's going to be interesting for those listeners. And there's a lot of them. There's a lot of them that reach out to me. A lot of people reach out to me and tell me, I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about that. What do you think? And I don't have a lot of personal experience, and that's, you know what I mean, Nick? And that's what Owner Stories is about, is that other people can give their story, give their experience, because I'm not an expert, as I always say. I'm just an enthusiast.
As we all are. Yeah.
All right. So as you know, I always like to start this podcast, and we always like to start Owner's Stories with, where it all started. And where it all started as in, did you have a relative that had a Porsche? Did you have that poster on your wall as a kid? Was it something that you only sort of started noticing once you started working later in life, and then thought, hang, I've got some extra cash here, I'm going to splurge and I'm going to buy myself a 911, or I'm going to buy myself a Boxster? When did it all start for you? When did you first start noticing Porsche?
I reckon it must have been as maybe a 12-year-old or thereabouts. Certainly my immediate family, my mum and dad didn't especially have great cars as we grew up. They just had regular cars. They didn't buy sports cars or flash cars or anything like that. Dad ended up getting a couple of Porsches later in life. He's still around, but I was an adult by that stage. In fact, he got his first Porsche at about the same time I got mine. But I certainly, as a 12-year-old, I remember I wasn't attached to any particular brand, so I was definitely focused more on European cars, and I was snipping out, images out of magazines and just plaster. I just remember the walls in my bedroom was like wallpapered with images of cars. I don't know that I had particularly, the Countach and the 911 Turbo, and people talk about because it was at that time, it was the mid 80s. I'm sure that was somewhere in there, but I was focused on all sorts of things.
It's weird that, isn't it? It's weird that, sorry to interrupt, but it's weird that the Countach and the Ferrari posters, like, I never had those posters. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe I missed out somewhere along the line, but I never had those posters on my wall. But it doesn't mean I'm not interested in cars. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sure they existed, and I think they live in people's imagination anyway. But I had a whole lot of cars on my wall, and I was into it. And but then the Porsche thing really clicked in for me when an aunt of mine. Well, I think initially it was because she was a journalist and she was doing the show Beyond 2000. I heard the stories about when she she went to Germany to see the 959 in development. It must have been a couple of years before it was released. And she was talking about the technology of cars. And that was a spaceship at the time. And I don't think I even appreciated what it actually was that she was talking about. But it was definitely the 959. So,
wow, that's very cool. Yeah. Very cool to see.
Yes. That. So I was aware of that. And I don't know if the story's true, but I half feel like she might have even crashed the car in the story.
Okay.
But so that lives in my memory. And then a couple of years later, she bought a 1959 356A, and she lived in Sydney. But the car was from Melbourne, and we lived in Melbourne. And and in its transport to Sydney, it ended up at our place for a day or something. And I don't think anyone really knew what it was, but I was enamoured with it. And I would have still been at school at that stage. And maybe a year or two later, we used to go to Sydney for holidays and stay with her quite frequently. And she gave me the keys on a couple of occasions, and I drove it around Sydney, and I thought that was pretty incredible.
So that's a pretty unique experience to drive a 356.
Yeah.
And that's probably when they weren't. This is in the 90s, is it, or early 2000s? 90s?
Yeah. No, early 90s. It would have been like 91 or 91, 92, that sort of time. So
they were very cool then, and they were very unique. They weren't as sought after, though, were they? Because I know that, and I mentioned this story before, I remember I think it's early 2000, the guy that owned Icebergs in Sydney, Morris, he had a 356, a beat up 356, and I thought it was the coolest thing, but not many people had them, and that was when they were reasonably well priced in Australia as well, before the boom, so to speak. So you get the experience of driving this beautiful air-cooled, you get the experience of being in your aunt's 356. Does that make you think, so you're working then, or you're still at school? I
was just starting uni. So I was still a way off. I was still a way off being able to buy even a car. So so I was still.
So you started uni, and you're an architect, right? You're an architect. So that's a long process at university to be an architect, isn't it?
6 years, two degrees, 6 years. So I was a little while before I was sort of in a paid job and thinking about buying my first car. So during those uni years, I was living in Adelaide, and I just rode a push bike, and I got loaned a car from time to time, but I didn't have a car for ages. So, but the whole 356 thing, that was really the bug, and I was obsessed to try and get a Porsche as quick as I could after that. So,
so you finished uni, you start working, you set up your own business, or you start working, and then you think, okay, this is it. I'm going to buy my first Porsche. What did you start looking for?
Well, my first car was actually a MGB 1969. I bought that maybe a year, maybe the first year into work. Would have been 98. I had that for a couple of years, and then or three or so years. Then my girlfriend. So in 2001, my girlfriend at the time and my current partner, she had a MX-5 and I had an MGB.
Okay.
And we decided somehow I was connected with a salesperson at Dutton here in Melbourne.
Yes. And
somehow the idea of buying a 911 came to fruition, and we decided that we would pool our resources of the MG and the old little MX-5 and buy a 911. And so I was, at the time, the car that was suggested to anyone at the time as the best first Porsche was a G Series 85 Carrera. It was so that became the one. Dutton had one on the floor. It must have been about 50 odd thousand. The two cars that we had, when you put them both together, like sell them and put them together, it was worth about 50,000. And interestingly, with the deal with Dutton, like they were so accommodating. Like I was just a young guy with a couple of cars. It's like, oh yeah, I'd love to buy this, but we haven't sold these other cars yet. So they kind of said, oh yeah, okay, well, we'll hold the 911 for you, and you go away and sell your cars and come back when you can. When you've got the money, come back and we'll have it waiting for you. So
okay. that wouldn't happen today, right? Would that still happen today at Dutton's? I don't think so.
I don't think so. Even at the time, like I'd managed to sell the MGB and we were having a little bit of issues selling the MX-5, and they said, oh, just bring it in. We'll put it on the showroom floor. We'll see if we can sell it here for you. So they didn't end up doing that. We ended up selling it another way, but they were being super accommodating. And
that's great.
This is with Jeff Dutton and one of the guys that we knew there. So that was
Sorry to interrupt. To the listeners, if I think I have mentioned this before, but Dutton's in Melbourne is a really quite a special car dealer, isn't it, Nick? I mean, they have Ferraris, they have very rare cars. I think they've even had a Carrera GT in there at one stage. They've had
they have everything.
They have everything.
There.
Yeah.
Race car. It's all highly collectible. Very rare cars, all the brands that you can imagine. But yeah, a lot of Ferraris, Porsches, Lamborghinis. It's an incredible place. So yeah, that was where I got my first car when they were on Church Street in Richmond. So they were in this sort of old warehouse. So they're in a cool space now, but for a lot of years they were on Church Street in Richmond in this big sort of timber truss, warehouse type space full of beautiful cars. So.
Okay, so tell the listeners a little bit more about this car. So what was the car? It was a 1985 G Series, right? So
yeah, so it was had the 915 gearbox. It was the last of the leaded petrol models, so it had 231 horsepower. It was white. I think they called it Grand Prix white. It had a dark blue interior. It wasn't immaculate, but it was in pretty good. It was in pretty good nick, and so yeah, it was, and it was a great car to have. It was a dream. Like as soon as I got that car, I was in love with it. I'd only just stopped working for another architectural practice and starting my own, so timing wasn't ideal. But I took the risk. I wasn't going to wait. I just simply wasn't going to wait.
When is the timing ever right? Really, is it? It's never really right.
Yeah.
It's always you always just dive in, don't you? Well, most people dive in.
I think you're doing, yeah.
So when you got this car, when you got the G Series, great color combination, blue interior with the white, perfect for that generation. So you're driving around Melbourne. Do you see any similarities in this car from the 356 that you drove of your aunt's all those years before?
Yeah, I think so. It obviously had a whole lot more power and performance, but yeah, it had all those Porsche hallmarks and the solidity and the clunk of the door and the unique smell that you get from Porsches with the certain sort of carpet and the leather and the metal and the oil. It's just a very familiar smell.
Yeah.
With all of them. So
I think what's interesting though is you started with this G Series. You started with an air cooled. You bought one when they were good prices, when they weren't so crazy like they are now.
Yeah.
And then I want to talk about, and I did this in a previous episode, so then you go from this air-cooled and then you buy your next 911. So does this come straight after? Do you sell
Yes.
Do you sell the G Series for the next one? So tell the listeners what the next one is, because you're going from air to water.
Yeah, I went from a G Series 911 85 Carrera to a 996 Mark II. Carrera 996 Mark II. So it was a fair change. And at the time, that car was not. It was almost like a new car. So I was making a massive leap from a 25 to 30-year-old car to a 2-year-old car.
Yes.
So I was. in fact, with the G Series 911, I hadn't long done a top end rebuild on that car, so I had it. It was working beautifully. I got it all working amazingly with the top end rebuild, and then very shortly after I sold it, and I got this 996.
So why did you want to make the change? Why did you? I mean, this is you bought a 2002 996.2, right? You told me 2002. Yeah. So you bought that in what year? Right. You bought that when it was only a couple of years old?
Yeah, I must have bought it in 2004, 2005, so something like that.
So pretty new car, basically. So it's the new 911, controversial 911 at the time, a love and hate relationship from people when they're buying it. So what made you sell this? What made you sell the G Series to get to the 996? What was the deciding factor why you thought you wanted the 996?
I think I was just looking for I was looking for the most contemporary car I could get. And at the time, that was the new 911. And I know there was sort of the hang-ups about the fried egg lights, but I had the turbo style lights. I think at the time I thought they were cool. I've never had an issue with actually the whole 996 design, but I didn't see it as a negative in it. It was only a massive leap forward from where I was sitting at the time. And I totally loved the 996. It was, I didn't keep it all that long because the next car was a fairly big jump from that one. but it was a great car. I've loved every single 911 I've ever had. It hasn't actually mattered which one I've had. Okay. So
I guess, Nick, I guess because on the owner stories, right, a lot of people who are buying 996s are buying them now, and they're buying them because they're available, because they want a first 911. They get into Porsche by buying a 996, which, around the world are cheaper than Australia, but still in Australia they're a low price. I guess what I was getting at is that you bought it when the price wasn't low. You bought it so basically you wanted that car because it was the latest 911, it was new technology, and that's what appealed to you. And you're already into the Porsche brand. You love Porsche, and that was the logical next step. And also air cools weren't I'm not saying as cool, but not as loved in that period, right?
No, not the same. And even when I had my car, the idea of a 911 SC was not considered a great. No one was hankering for a 911 SC.
Yeah, true.
They are now, but no one did then.
Yeah.
So there's nothing wrong. They're great cars, but it's just different over time how things change. But I think people thinking about a 996 now, they are sort of this. They've got that entry level price. They are kind of affordable. You can't really get they've got their foibles and they've got their things, but there's a 911 is a 911. It's always been Porsche's since 1963. It's been their flagship product, and there is no such thing as a bad 911 essentially.
Yeah, I agree.
So I think you can't really go wrong.
True. So you bought the first one from Dutton's. You're still living in Melbourne. Where do you buy the second one? Does it come from a dealer? You got a dealer you can trust, or you buy it privately?
It comes from a dealer. It came from Porsche Centre Melbourne, and I guess one of the reasons why I bought it from there was at about that time or a little bit earlier, I started working for Porsche as an architect. So the import company, Porsche Cars Australia, who is my client, they operate out of that Porsche Centre Melbourne dealership, and that Porsche Centre Melbourne dealership is a factory-owned dealership. So I had that company connection, and I had the ability to get a new car through, or newish car through them.
Okay.
With a bit of a leg up, so to speak.
So I know the listeners are going to be saying, ask Nick about what he did for Porsche. So what did you do? Did you do the dealerships? The architecture of the dealerships in Australia? Or?
Yeah, the first job I did was they needed to do a new parts distribution warehouse, and I helped someone do a model so they could go to Germany and get the funding for the project. And so they came back and they got the funding and said, Nick, we've got a live project. And so I just fell into being the architect of that.
Oh, that's great.
And then shortly after that, once you're in the door, then, they work, they're like a lot of companies, they work with, loyalty and relationships. And when they then needed to do a dealership design, I was there. I was an architect. I was an enthusiast. I was passionate. And I had to compete for the job, but I secured it. And so I did Porsche Centre Melbourne. I did Porsche Centre Doncaster and Brighton. And then I ended up being an architectural representative for Porsche in Australia and help whenever they needed to advise the dealer network of upgrades and changes to be in line with corporate identity guidelines. Then the work would go through me, and I'd sort of scrutinise and give the direction for what should happen. So
that's a great situation to be in. Fantastic.
Oh, it's perfect to bring your passion and your work together. So,
exactly. That's what makes you smile. I think Steve's always said he would have loved to have done the Porsche account for, advertising or marketing. It's always one of those things that you just want to do,
and they had those really fun ads. Those comical ads.
Yeah. So you've got the 996.2. So you buy it from Porsche Melbourne. You trust them. You know the car's fine. It probably came with a warranty at the time because it was quite reasonably new. So it was all sorted. So then you're driving that car. You're enjoying that car. You're doing the architecture for Porsche centres through Melbourne.
Yeah.
So how long do you own the 996.2 Carrera, the blue Carrera for?
I think a couple of years, and 2 or 3 years. It might have been 3. It was probably 3. I enjoyed it. And then somewhere along the line, I got the idea that perhaps a GT3 was something that was, because I guess I was always sniffing around the dealership because I was kind of there and I was looking at things, and the dream started to expand a little bit. So
you're being tempted. That's the worst part.
Yes.
You're being tempted daily by going into these dealerships and working for Porsche. So then,
that's right.
So then you get, so I just want to go back to the 996 just very quickly. So during the period of the 996 and during that time, was the IMS that something that was there in conversation, or was it not really there then? I'm just trying to work. I can't remember.
I don't reckon it was that understood at that particular time. I know, like, it's become understood in time and it's discussed frequently. But I don't think it wasn't the issue then. I don't think anyone was. It was a new car, and I don't think anyone was really discussing that as a particular foible.
Okay.
It certainly emerged, but it wasn't my concern at the time. And but even like 964s at the time, they were maligned because everyone said that they leaked, because of the crankcase design, they leaked oil, and everyone said, "Oh, you don't touch 964s.
Yeah,
they're terrible."
Exactly, I remember that.
Time changes.
It does. Look at 964 prices in Australia now; it's gone crazy.
All
right, so you're in the 996.2. This is you've gone from air, you've gone to water. So then you think, okay, I want something a little bit. I want a GT car. I want something a bit more special. So how did you get into the next car? And tell the listeners what you bought.
So I was looking around the dealership and I found a 996 Mark II GT3, a red one. It had ceramic brakes. I spoke to the sales guy about it. I was probably, I wasn't really dithering, but I think I just had a look at it. I didn't even drive it, and I just went away and thought, I'll think about it. The next day I went back, and I went back to basically say, I want to buy this car, and but in the meantime they'd sold it to another guy, and I think it was Rob Raymer, who used to be a dealer, an independent dealer here in Melbourne, who passed away a handful of years ago. So he sort of snuck in and he just was there on a moment, and he bought it. So
right.
and literally at the time that I was walking to say, I wouldn't mind, I want that car too, and then it was already gone. But then because I had this relationship with Porsche, someone within head office had heard that I'd missed out on that car on the floor, and they just said, Nick, don't worry about that. I've got a better option for you, which was Porsche has a sport driving school up in Queensland at Mount Cotton, and they have a whole fleet of cars, and at any given time at the time they had 3 GT3s, and they were about to turn them over because they were a couple of years old at that stage, and they were about to be put onto the dealer network. And So anyway, this executive at Porsche said, look, before we talk to the dealer network or put them out, if you want to fly up to Queensland and have a look, go and pick one. So I jumped on a flight, went to Mount Cotton, and there was a red one, a black one, and a white one.
Okay.
And the guy pulled them out of the garage for me, and I picked one. So
okay, so were you concerned that this car was used at the driving school and people had been, pushing it to the limits and driving it hard?
Not particularly, because I knew once I bought it as well, it was being bought through the dealer, and I had a warranty. So. Okay.
So yeah, when you bought it, Nick, how old was the car? So these cars, they wouldn't keep for very long?
Yeah, I think they'd kept. It was 2 years old at the time. So
okay,
by this time it was 2000, and it must have been 2009. And the car was a 2007 997 Mark 1 GT3 Club Sport.
There's a trend here where you get into apart from the air-cooled, you're getting into reasonably new cars. You're getting into cars that are a couple of years old. You're not buying them new, but you're getting into them when they're, the prices come back a little bit. The availability is there. So what did the 997.1 GT3, as you know, Steve's got one of those and he's a huge fan. So what were the options that came with your car? What did that GT3 have?
It didn't have a lot, as they don't tend to do, but it was the Club Sport pack. So it had the roll cage. It had the Carrera GT seats, which were awesome.
Yeah.
I would almost have bought the car just for the seats alone.
Yeah.
It had two sets.
They are the best seats.
Yeah. It had two sets of race of harnesses, because it was a car with a driver and an instructor. And that was kind of it in terms of options. Otherwise, it just, standard stereo, no sunroof, no leather trim. No. Okay. But when you got a GT3, you don't care about any of that stuff.
Yeah, don't tell Steve that. So you fly up to Queensland. You literally see this. You have the choice of three. Candy store situation. You have the choice. You pick the white one, and that's it. So then you get it. They ship it back down to Melbourne for you.
That's right. And then they peel off all the stickers and detail it, and yeah.
So they fix up the car for you. They detail it. They give it a service. They do all that for you, and it's all perfect. So then you've got a GT car. Do you then think of doing track days in the GT car?
Yeah, and I did. I didn't do like them super frequently, but I was doing them at least 2 or 3 times a year, and I was going to Phillip Island or Winton. Sandown is really accessible for us in Melbourne. Not the greatest track, but it's in the metropolitan area, so we'd always go there at odd times. And yeah, so the car was obviously made for that place, all those places. The pinnacle of my track experience in that car was being able to go to Bathurst in 2010.
Yeah.
There was there was an event that all of the Australian Porsche clubs came together on, and so we got to drive the circuit as a race circuit, drive it as fast as you dare, and my yeah.
That's pretty scary though, because I mean, when I was a kid, we used to live near Bathurst. I lived near Bathurst for quite some time, up to 10 years of age. And we went to Mount Panorama, and because you can drive through the track, right? It's just a road. I don't know whether it still is. And just some of those drops in the road and the angles, and you think when you're doing that at speed, like it's a very tactical, very very looks like a difficult track, to drive on. So did you have previous track? How did you get into doing track days with your GT3? Did you have any experience, or you just went in there and did things with the Porsche Club first? How did you get into it?
I didn't do anything with the Porsche Club. I did odd things with the Porsche Club, but not sprints or racing or anything like that. I did some of the I joined, and then they have different interest groups. Like there's a GT3 group, and you drive out to the Yarra Valley and you do a drive with the group. I did that kind of thing, and then I joined the club as well, so I could do this Bathurst thing. But prior to that, I'd done a bunch of the Porsche driver training events up at Mount Cotton. So I'd had that professional sort of advanced driver training tuition. By that time, I'd also done Camp 4 in Finland, which is on the ice. I subsequently went back to Finland and went to Ice Force as well. But yeah, I was getting tuition through, when you do a track day, whether it was with Porsche or with there's also that company called Events O'Neill. Luke O'Neill runs these track days, and you get tuition and you've got an open track. And so, yeah. So that was where I was getting my experience, just driving and then getting race car drivers on the day jump in the car with you, and they tell you how they drive and how you can be better and so on and so forth.
It's interesting to me that the two owners from Melbourne that I've had on the owner stories, yourself and James from Porsche Platts, have both done track days. I mean, he's obviously well into it with these cup cars, but you've both done track days. So I think it's quite interesting that, not a lot of people do track days in their Porsche. So it's quite interesting. And you both come from Melbourne. I don't know whether that's because you have a lot of tracks around there or because Phillip Island is so close or...
I think there's a big allure with Phillip Island. Like, it's really magnetic. It's sort of, when you're into cars, it's hard not. It's almost a rite of passage. Like, you almost need to say that you've been. If you haven't, if you're really into cars, everyone says, "Oh yeah, I've driven Phillip Island." Okay. So yeah, that's how I feel anyway.
We've got to get through all these cars. I'm worried we're not going to get through everything. So we got the GT3. You're in the GT experience. You're using the car how it should be used. You're doing track days. You're working the car. Obviously, you had a lot of fun with that car. What made you switch it out? What made you change it?
We were buying a new place, and I needed to just free up some finances, and I was just staring down a different level of mortgage, and it's like, I think I can't not have a Porsche, but I need to do something that's a bit more sensible.
Okay.
And so when I went from a GT3, the thing that made sense to me was to go to the polar opposite of a GT3, and that was a Boxster.
Okay. So what year was this, Nick? What year did you?
This was now 2012. So I bought the 981 series Boxster, and I bought a new one.
Oh, you bought a new one. Okay. So you had so you went to Porsche Melbourne, or is that where you bought it from?
Yeah, I went to Porsche Melbourne and I bought a brand new Boxster, and I went from a white GT3 to a black Boxster. So everything about it was opposite. So, yeah.
So the 981 is a great Boxster. It's a great generation of the Boxster. And I have had Stephen from Sydney, who was in a recent episode, who spoke about his red one that he bought. And he was looking for 981 and he was looking for Guards Red, and he definitely wanted manual. And he waited 2 years to find that. And I kind of believe it, because now when you look on car sales, which is in Australia, which I always refer to, there's not many 981 Boxsters in manual. Like, they're very hard to come by. They've become very sought after, or not many people bought them in manual, which is probably part of the reason as well. So you get the opportunity.
Yeah, and I had a manual one.
You did? So you get the opportunity to spec this Boxster out at Porsche Melbourne. How do you option it?
Pretty basically, like, again, I had a cost reason to sort of go cheaper. So it's an entry level car, and I didn't load it up with a lot of stuff. I just black on black, 20-inch wheels, which I ended up painting because I'd come from the GT3, which had an epic soundtrack. That's that oral experience of a GT3 is almost half of why you buy the car. So I put a sports exhaust on the Boxster to at least get as much noise out of it as I can. And then I think other than that, I put a sport design steering wheel on it because it was a nice design.
Yes.
And it was quite similar to the GT3 steering wheel at the time, and then just the sports exhaust. I think that was it. So it was a bog standard Boxster, 20-inch wheels, sports exhaust, and a steering wheel and manual. So,
but really, we always say there's nothing wrong with the base. There's nothing wrong with the bog standard. And, you really did spec it quite well. You got the manual, you got the sound. I mean, what else do you really need? You know what I mean? The other things are creature comforts. How was the power, though? Because you've bought a Boxster, a standard Boxster, entry-level Boxster. Yeah. How was the power when you first picked up that car and you're driving it compared to your GT3? How different did it feel? Was it a lot? Around Melbourne and around those sort of places where you usually drive, how did it feel?
I think it's still an awesome car. Like, I sort of go back to all of these cars. I've enjoyed every single one of them. And even when I had the G Series 85 Carrera, sometimes you'd get the opportunity to drive someone else's car, and or you do like a Porsche driving event, and you're driving absolutely brand new cars, and you sort of have this thing in your stomach, not your stomach, but you feel like, oh, I hope I haven't spoilt my experience of my other car because I'm driving something absolutely brand new and the performance is on another level. But then you go back to your own car and you're like, oh, I still love this car. This still is, tingly, and I love it and I enjoy it, and it hasn't ruined the experience at all. So I sort of feel like with the Boxster was similar. Like the GT3 was something else, but I appreciate the Boxster for entirely different reasons. And it's still a Porsche. It's still a driver's car. It's got the roof down. It's still. I still felt good in it. I didn't not enjoy it. So yeah.
Yeah, I think there's
it
more.
Obviously has.
Sorry, yeah, there's more things, isn't there? Because it is a convertible, because it is a roadster. You've got the drop top. That brings so much more to the experience. It's not just always about speed. I always talk on the podcast about experience. It's not always about speed and power. But the 981 Boxster, based on that first G series you had, or even the 996.2 Carrera, the power would be similar, right? It must have been very, very similar to those earlier cars for sure, if not more of the G series.
Yeah, I think the Boxster might have been 270 horsepower or something like that.
Okay.
And then having come out of the GT3 with 420 or 415, so it was a big step, but it still was a great car. I really enjoyed it, and so.
But I think what you're showing is that you're going through, you've had a lot of generations here, and things come up in life. You're still earning good money, but things happen, and you've got to get rid of something that you really enjoy, that you've been doing track days with, that's worth still a reasonable amount of money. It's still it's an expensive asset. But you don't want to get out of the brand completely. You don't want to go and buy a Toyota or a Ford or something like that. So you stick with Porsche, but you get, a Boxster, and you still got that great experience. So I think that's a good thing for the listeners as well, because it is, it's about, and we keep saying this, is about buying the one you can afford, or buying the one that, the situation that you're in, you should just buy that 911 or buy that Porsche, and don't wait too long, because, the experience, once you start experiencing it, it really is something that you want to keep doing. So you have this Boxster, you have the 981 Boxster, it's black on black, it's a pretty cool car, it's got manual transmission. How long did you keep that car for?
I think must have been 4 years, close to 4 years. And then I started thinking about another car, and then I was thinking about going to a Cayman.
Okay.
And I was thinking about just getting a Cayman S and speccing it up, and getting a bit more power, putting a bunch more options into it. But then once I started doing that, it wasn't a $200,000 car, but it was sort of going in that direction. And then it started to make more sense actually to think about a 911 instead of a Cayman. So it was still a bit of a monetary stretch, but I started to move away from the Cayman, and the 911 came into focus again.
So what model was the Cayman at that time? Which Cayman were you looking at? Generation?
I think it must have been 718. So,
Okay, so it's the new 718.
Yeah.
So six-cylinder 718 Cayman S.
Yes.
Okay. So the first generation.
And I was on the configurator, as we all do, looking at a million different ways and spec, all the colors and all the options and all, the multitude of options. And then somewhere along the way, I changed gear figuratively and started looking at 911s instead, which is the 991.2. And
this is 2016, around 2016, 2017?
Yeah, that's right. It would have been late 2016. Yeah, late 2016, early 2017. I ended up getting the 991.2 in mid 2017, July 2017. So there's all that. Yeah, once I'd specified it and ordered it, there's those months that you wait before it's built and it arrives. Yeah.
So you've bought a new car from Porsche. You've gone back to Porsche Melbourne, and you've purchased another car. Are you Was there a point where you thought maybe I'll get a demo version or a used version, the 991.1, or was the 991.2 just announced and you wanted the turbo, the revised engine, you wanted a new car, you wanted to be able to specify and option it out yourself? What was the reasoning behind not buying a 0.1?
Yeah, I wanted to. I could make the new one financially work, but only at a stretch. I could do some options, but not option it right up. But it ended up really suiting the philosophical position that I wanted the car to end up in anyway. But yeah, I didn't. Yeah, I had the option to buy a new car, so that's what I was looking at. I wasn't swayed by the naturally aspirated versus the turbocharged. It was certainly on the agenda a bit, but I think I was optimistic it was going to be good, even though everyone was concerned at the time about whether it may or may not be. And then I guess the big decision I was making at that time too was PDK versus manual, and I vacillated on that a bit, but then in the end was like, no, I've always had manual, and that's what I'm going to do again.
So I guess that's a good choice, though, because the 991.1 manual had issues in the beginning, or there's reported issues of the 7-speed in the beginning, right, of the 991.1. Yeah. People don't like it as much. But then the 991.2, it's all revised. You know, you're getting an updated, you know, apart from updated entertainment system and the non-naturally aspirated engine and, you know, all the rest of it.
Yeah.
So how did you spec that car? How did you do it on a budget? Because you're doing these you're being sensible when you're speccing these. It seems like that's a common thread here. So how do you spec the new 991.2?
So I wanted, again, the sound. So sports exhaust, manual. So that was also keeping the price low, but entirely engaging drive. No sunroof. I didn't want the weight in the wrong spot, and I quite often from enthusiasts get the comment like, "Oh, yeah, that's quite a savvy choice not to tick the sunroof box." What else? I put some
I would do that as well. Sorry, Nick. Sorry to interrupt. I would do that as well. You know that I would not tick the sunroof either. I would opt not to have it.
So. Then I picked sport design wing mirrors. I think I upgraded the stereo to a Bose system. Silver color. I'd just come off a black Boxster, and I guess my OCD car washing tendencies was I was over maintaining black.
Yeah.
So a black car is the best color for a minute after it's washed. So I was keen to get a color that I could easily maintain, and I was looking for this very classic. I was going for a classic look, just as almost as with a brand new car, as close to the original concept as I possibly could get, which is a base Carrera manual with minimal options. And I even stuck with the Carrera wheels. I kept with the 19-inch wheels, not 20. That didn't go for the Carrera S wheels, and that was partly budgetary, but I also I liked how the base wheels looked as well. Just a very simple 5-spoke. I was just going for a very clean look.
No, I like your car. I've always liked it on Instagram, and it always looks clean, which I always like too. It always looks very clean and shiny. But I think you've done the right thing. I mean, it's pure, you know what I mean? And this is the thing about base Carrera or standard Carrera or just Carrera as we call it. You know, you got the manual, you got the sound which you require. You know, you can up the wheels if you want, but the wheels that came with it are perfect. And you don't really need much else, do you? You really don't. And the fact that you opted for no sunroof, and I need to point this out to the listeners, and I'm not sure if this is the same in UK or the US or in Europe, but a lot of people in Australia, when they spec a 911, or a lot of the ones the dealers always have the sunroof. And this is a problem I know when I look at 991.1 GTSs when they come up. They've always got a sunroof. It's very rare that you'll find that glass sunroof, which I'm really not a fan of. They look great on Macans and look great on Cayennes and all those sort of things, but on the Porsche, to me, they're just too much.
Yeah, because they're all in black. They're quite contrasting to the whole body. And the other thing I did eliminate in my specs was no windscreen wiper on the back. I wanted it all clean. I wanted it clean on the back as well. So,
but Nick, it rains in Melbourne. It rains in Melbourne.
I know. I was willing to deal with that.
I didn't have that choice. I didn't have the choice, so I've got the rear wiper on my 997, as you know, and I've also got the sunroof. But Sunroof I never use, and I've said this before. I forget it's there. I never open it. I think I've opened it once or twice since the whole time I've had the car, which is probably not a good thing. It's probably like stuck now. But the rear wiper, I have to say, I do use it. I do use it, but it looks better without. It does look better without.
Yeah, it's just cleaner. Nick Murray in the US always talks up. He always talks up the rear wiper. Yeah,
so. I know. That's what I was thinking. About. All right, so you've had the listeners are thinking, wow, you've had a good selection of Porsches here. You've gone from air to water. You've got a GT water cooled, and then you go to the Boxster, and now you've got the 991.2 Carrera and GT Silver, which is an option color as well. That's not a standard color, is it? That's an option color. GT Silver's
and I always appreciated how in the day it was the Carrera GT Silver, that Halo supercar, and at the time that was the only Porsche car that came in that GT Silver. So it used to be a very special color because of that reason. Yeah,
it was the Carrera GT, and then they brought out that anniversary Boxster, and they put that out in GT Silver. That was the only other car then at the time. It wasn't available as an option as a color. Then they put it in that Boxster, which I forget what anniversary, one of the anniversaries of the Boxster.
I remember that. You're right. You're exactly right. Yep.
Yeah, and that was the first one, and then they started offering it as an option. But it's the best. I mean, it's much nicer than Arctic Silver, which is my car. The GT Silver is much nicer.
It's just got a little bit of warmth in it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay, so you've got the 991.2. So you're enjoying that. Yeah. You've had it for a few years. There's no rush to switch that out.
No, not at this stage. I'm probably due get itchy feet soon. But I've been told by my partner a few other things need to happen before another car comes on the scene. So I did buy this Carrera.
Okay, I'm gonna pull you up there because I follow you on Instagram and I look at your Instagram. I see a Macan that's appeared on there. So you're saying there's no more cars coming up, but then there's a Macan on your Instagram over the past week. So
that's.
So
Yeah, Marie's my partner's car. She just changed her Mercedes, a little Mercedes, to a Macan. So we're enjoying that. But in terms of like another 911 or a car like that, I'm sort of enjoying this one at the moment, and I've got some other things to be done at home first, i.e. renovation and things like that. So, but that's on the card. So it mightn't be all that far down the track when I think about another car, but I'm totally happy with the one I've got at the moment, and I use it as a daily driver. I use it to take kids to school and transport a dog, and it does all that stuff perfectly well.
So would you look at a 992 next if you were looking for another 911, or would you go back in time a little bit?
I think I'd go back. It's interesting. I'm not I don't dislike the 992, and I'm sure if I had one, I'd love it too. But I'm not hankering for one. So I'm if I really had my choice, and money and availability wasn't an issue, a 991.2 GT3 Touring would be the car.
Yep,
yeah.
I agree.
That's the one. Be the end of it.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. That's that's on my list as well. I really love that car, and they do come up in Australia. I've seen them come up. There was a GT Silver one, I think, a Porsche Willoughby a while back for about $349 or $369 or something. They're still not they're not cheap, but it's a car that's just going to appreciate in value, and you just enjoy it so much. It's a great looking car.
Yeah.
All right, so let's so you bought a lot of these cars from dealers. You didn't really have to do PPIs as such because the Boxster was new. The GT3 you got basically from Porsche, and they had it all checked out for you. They fixed it up. They serviced it.
And it did have a warranty too. So, so I've had warranties. I've had warranties on all my cars for a while. Yeah.
So does your 991.2 still in warranty under Porsche? Is it extended warranty?
Yeah, it's just gone through 3 years, and last year I extended it for another 2. And I think Porsche now, they used to only extend the warranty up to 10 years, but I think they extend it up to 15 now if you happen to have it that long. So it's a pretty good insurance policy.
So how do they work the price out on that in Australia? Does it go up depending on how old the car is, the warranty price? Or is it?
I don't know about that. It's kind of a couple of $1,000 a year. When I bought 2 years as a package. They gave it to me for there was a deal on it, so it might have been 3,000 or so. But they basically, it's got to be a known car, and they do a 100-point check on it. And if they've been servicing it, they know the car. They're offering these extended warranty packages. So I guess when it comes up, you get a letter to say, do you want to extend or not? So yeah.
Okay. So I'm a big fan of PPI. I'm a big fan of Porsche pre-purchase inspections. But it seems like there's a common thread, with you and other owners as well. When you buy it from a dealer, when the dealer's, a reputable dealer, it's a Porsche dealership, you have a relationship with them, it's got a warranty, then you really feel a lot safer. You don't have to do a lot more, independent checks. So you pretty much just go forward with the purchase. Yeah,
that's right. There's a pretty big safety net there. But otherwise, if you're buying through other channels and privately and whatever, you would absolutely do a PPI.
Okay. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So out of these cars, and I want to get onto this before we run out of time, but out of these cars,
Sure.
servicing, maintenance, running costs, and I know you got to cast your mind back here with the first one you bought, but what do you think out of all the cars? I mean, they've all been reasonably reliable, it seems, from what you've said.
Yes.
But as in general running costs, maintenance, what has been the most expensive one to maintain, to keep?
It's certainly been the GT3, and it wasn't because I didn't have any reliability issues. It was perfect. It's a bulletproof car. It will take punishment. It's designed to do what it does. You can take it on track and drive it as hard as you like, and it's gonna be fine. But with that car, it was expensive because of the tires. Those Michelin Pilot Sport Cup tires. They didn't have Cup 2 at the time. But they were particularly expensive. I was dailying the car as well. So I was putting quite a few miles on it, not just track. I was driving it every day to work and using it as a daily driver. So I was going through a couple of sets of tyres a year, and new sets of tyres was maybe $3,500 to $4,000 a set. So,
so it's expensive.
You can do the maths on that. And then I guess the annual servicing wasn't especially expensive. It wasn't crazy prices. It wasn't especially more than servicing a Carrera or some other 911. It was, I was never blown away by the servicing bills. That was fine. But it was just things like, I guess, insurance, extending the warranty, tires, and I guess adding the service cost on top of that. It just added up to quite a bit when you put it all together. As a total annual cost. But otherwise, nothing especially went wrong with the car. The only other thing too is I got unlucky on one track day where on the southern loop corner at Phillip Island, I lost it there's an off camber aspect. I spun off the track and everything was fine. I continued my track day, but then the next day the tire went flat. I took it into Porsche and said, can you fix my flat tire? And they called back an hour later, said, you've cracked your rim. So I'd caught the inside edge on a chicane. I didn't realize I'd cracked the rim. And so then the track day went from, all of a sudden I had to buy a new rim and 2 tires, and, it became an expensive track day.
I guess it could have been worse though, right? It could have been worse. It's just the wheel and the tire. At least there's no body damage or anything like that.
It wasn't the worst. And pretty much on any track day I've been on, someone has something happen. So just that running out of talent, end of the day, tired, overconfident, blah, blah, blah. So
I always like to ask the question, we've gone through, all of your cars, and usually if it's just one car, I ask people how they're going to make it their own and what modifications they add to it. But it seems like with you, because you have bought, new cars, you've had that option from the very beginning to get it exactly how you want. So has there been anything that you've added? Let's just talk about your current car, actually, the 991.2. Has there any other options that you've added to the car since you've owned it?
No, essentially no, except for an Urban Outlaw sticker and my number plate. And I thought certainly I always dabble with the idea of mods, and I definitely you want to change things up, but I sort of think I always double think it. So
well, because you made it pretty perfect, haven't you? You've made it, you thought about it when you bought it. So you actually, what else apart from changing wheels or having a different set of wheels, You don't have to be the exhaust. You've got the proper PSE, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
I'd probably be the same. I probably wouldn't touch it that much. You know what I mean? I really wouldn't touch it that much.
You sort of you get compelled by the idea of a tune. You can obviously chip the car easily and get another 100 horsepower out of it, but then I've put my whole warranty, well, not at risk. It's going to be, my warranty is going to be gone. I'm sort of risk adverse with that. And then after a while, you're sort of, chasing power doesn't have the same cachet that it might have done. And you're like, you know what, it's got enough. Like it puts a smile on my face. It's OEM. It's all good. Yeah.
Yeah. And you have to be, a common thread as well. I've spoken to other people, and I think it was Amir who's had 2 Porsches, and I think he's got one I think they're on warranty, and he was a bit hesitant. Not warranty, actually. He was more hesitant because of the Californian smog laws or something, pollution laws of changing things to his car. Other people I know who have bought a car under CPO in the US, under warranty in the US, and then they've bought a second car, maybe a Boxster or something, and that's the car they play with and mod, and then they keep their 911 stock because it's under warranty, and they don't really want to, take away from the purity of it. So I think that's an option too, if you have money, of course, if you have the option to have more than one Porsche. And we all know that the perfect Porsche garage is usually about 3 cars. You could probably, I think all of us could pick 3, an air-cooled, a water-cooled, and maybe a GT car, whether it be a Touring or a GT2 RS or a GT3 RS. We all want to have, I think it's 3 is like is the perfect number. With no limitations.
If everything aligned. Yeah, that's right. So we all have those dreams.
Let's talk about drives, because I want to talk about something that, that I think I commented on your Instagram at the time, because I was like, how did you get there and how did you get that photo and what are you doing looking at his cars? But let's go to the drives that you like. If someone comes to Melbourne, and then I want to get onto the LA thing, but if someone comes to Melbourne, where would you tell them to go for a drive in their 911 or their sports car?
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of places in the state that you can go to, but the most accessible is to head sort of northeast and towards Healesville, King Lake, and then that takes you out to our the wine area, the Yarra Valley, and so there's great sort of twisty roads. It's a great place to tour. You just have to pick your time and be a bit careful. Weekends it's full of traffic. We're in a bit of a nanny state, so there's plenty of police around. So you got to stay reasonably in the speed limit. But that you can't really go wrong with that location. So,
okay. Yeah. And your favorite track in Melbourne?
It's definitely Phillip Island.
Okay.
But Winton in the north of the state's pretty good as well. And then, as I said, Sandown's good because it's accessible. But Phillip Island's sort of like number 2 to Bathurst is number 1, and Phillip Island is number 2.
Okay.
And I've been to Eastern Creek as well, and that's pretty good as well. So
Phillip Island's about a hour and a half drive from Melbourne, roundabout.
Yeah,
or longer.
maybe 2, but it's not too far. It's accessible, close. And it's a very scenic track. It's a fast track and it's very scenic. It's right on the ocean. It's iconic.
Yeah. I've never been to Phillip Island. I've been to the area around there, Red Hill, and that area that's near there on the beach and stuff. And you can look across that, whatever that beach is that you look across, and you can see Phillip Island. I can't remember what it was called.
That would be Western Port Bay.
Yeah, beautiful area. All right, so
it is.
So that's the drives in Australia. So you've been lucky enough to drive another road, which I want to drive on, and you've been lucky enough to meet someone who I wouldn't mind meeting. I know Steve's not a fan of his, so tell us about the LA experience that you did with your son and how that came about. Because I think that's a great, for your son, it must have been a great thing to do. Absolutely fantastic thing to do.
No, it's one of the. I'm sure. Well, he's 9 years old, going on 10, and I'm sort of building the car dream. He's the prime age for building the car dream, and he's my little protege. But we went to LA and we rented a Cayman GTS one off Turo, that app Turo, and we got up at the crack of dawn. I'd worked out so we were in West Hollywood and picked up the car in downtown LA. It was great Cayman GTS 981 manual, and that all worked out fine. Then we headed towards the Angeles Crest Highway.
Fantastic.
Hadn't ever been there, but obviously you hear about it with Jay Leno and a smoking tire, Magnus Walker, Rod Emery, all those, you see them driving that road, and it's every bit as good and more of what you think it might be. And the driving scene obviously in LA is immense, and those mountain canyon roads are incredible. It's long, it's technical.
Yeah.
And within limits, you seem to be able to drive to the speed that you want to drive, which is not being stupid, but it's fast. And if you're doing 100, 130, 140, 150 on a twisty mountain road, you're doing pretty well. So, so it was exhilarating, amazing landscape. And then you end up at that Newcomb's Ranch.
Newcomb's Ranch, the famous one where they have they have the Friday drive there with Porsche Life 111 guy on Instagram that I follow and chat to. He has that drive that goes out there on Fridays.
Yeah, so we did that in the morning, and then we didn't really have a huge plan, but we decided to make it a car day. So we're going to start with the Angeles Crest and then breakfast at Newcomb's and then drive back down into LA, and then we went to the Peterson Museum and at the time the Porsche 70th anniversary exhibition was happening. And then they've always got awesome cars there. So we did all of that. And then we thought, maybe we should head towards the Arts District in downtown LA and maybe check out Magnus Walker's place.
Right.
And so we did. And we pulled up and we just,
So what did you do? You knocked on his door was open. How did that come about?
The gate was open. The front gate was open, and we walked in. We just wandered in, and then we were heading sort of towards the front door of the building, which is inside a courtyard where you sort of see him filming all this stuff. And then they were filming something there on that day, and so there was a film crew that sort of then started gesturing towards us, not being narky or anything, but they just said, "Oh, look, there's something going on here today. Look, it's not a good time, Pat." They were sort of ushering us out.
Okay.
But then as we were being ushered out, Magnus Walker came in, and then he saw me with my son, and he just sort of immediately kind of gravitated towards us, and then sort of brought us inside and asked us who we were, and we said we were from Melbourne, we're Porsche fans, and then it helped that I had Zach, my little son, with me, because then we just had a chat, and he was just very open, and he gave us a tour, and we just talked cars, and you could just feel that he's a legit enthusiast, and I think he's a good guy. And
how was it being in the garage though and seeing the cars? It must have been quite surreal to see all of these, because he's got such a collection.
He's got an amazing collection, and he just said, he just ushered us through to his collection and just let us sort of wander around, and we were chatting, and then he sort of asked Zach to take a seat in a couple of the cars, and
great thing to do. Great thing to do.
Yeah, and so it was a great day. It was the end of a great day. We had an epic car day in LA. And seeing Magnus Walker kind of capped it off. It was the full LA experience. So yeah.
I mean, if your son doesn't grow up to be a Porsche fan, then there's something wrong, because I think that's it. That's the turning point. I think that's what it'll be in years to come.
I would say so. Yeah.
Magnus Walker has that turbo. Actually, he has a turbo. I think that he actually sourced through Autohouse Hamilton in Australia. I think it might be that brown one that used to be red. I think it was the right-hand drive.
That's right.
Brown 930 turbo, which was red, and then he purchased it and changed it to brown and repainted the whole thing.
Yeah, he's definitely sourced a couple of cars from here, and there's a Sydney guy, I think. No, there's a guy in Sydney who's had one of his cars as well. So he's definitely got an Australian link.
With
some things. Yeah.
Yeah, at Autohouse Hamilton, his signature's on the bench there. Yeah, they've got his signature. I think he did something with their car with Grandad Autohouse's Hamilton's car that he's got. I think there was a video going over the Harbour Bridge or something like that. I just want to tell everyone to go. You don't mind me giving your Instagram? I've already given it, Nick, so I hope you don't mind.
It's not a problem.
So I want everyone to go to Nick's Instagram, which is architect_driving. Nick has. I actually want to ask you one more thing actually before we go. Nick has lots of great images of cars around Melbourne. There's lots of good cars in Melbourne. So Nick goes to events and he takes photos of the cars and he takes images of his his 911. So check that out and give Nick a follow. So it's Architect Driving. If you've been on Owner Stories before, you'll find, Nick, that a lot of people from Owner Stories will be messaging you now and chatting to you. It seems to be like a little community that's gathering. All the guys are really nice. All the guys are really nice guys, though. Very nice people. All right, so let's go into your other car. I have I'm losing my train of thought. Nick in the UK has got a Land Rover Series 3. Nick, who's been on the Owner Stories before, who has a 912. He has the car that I want. He's got a Series 3. So you have a Land Rover as well. Just tell the listeners what your other passion is in the landy sort of scene.
Yeah, well, I got the opportunity to buy a Land Rover Series 3 1973, which is the year of my birth. And I came across it on a farm in rural Victoria. I didn't really pay much or anything for it. And to me, the Land Rover is just the antithesis of a 911 and equally as iconic. From the 20th century, the 911 and the Land Rover is, they're memorable cars. So I'm loving the Land Rover basically because it's the opposite of the 911. It's a super rugged car and or truck. And I've got some work to do on. I need to get it sort of mechanically running well, but it's registered, it's drivable, and I use it just to pick up the milk from the shops and do a short little trip. So it's still a bit of an adventure. You're not always absolutely guaranteed of getting home,
right?
But hence I don't go too far. But
when you picked it up, did you get it trucked back to your place, or was it close by? Did you drive it back?
No, I drove it from Gippsland, and it was a bit of an adventure. Like, it doesn't go too fast. It really wasn't running that well, so right. I had to really baby it home, and it was I felt glad to have actually gotten home in it. So, but it made it. It made the trip, and I've done a few things to. Well, I did enough to get it roadworthied, and I did a little, did a head gasket replacement over COVID last year.
Okay.
Just looking at YouTube videos, thinking, oh yeah, I think I could do that. So, gave it a go.
The thing about these Land Rovers is there's so many cool sites out there, isn't there? There's that one in Lisbon that does all the cool Land Rovers, whatever that company is called. Yes. There's ones in
cool.
the what's that called? That place?
Is it Cool and Vintage?
Cool and Vintage, yeah.
Yeah, and they do great things, and they're almost like it's not quite Singer, but they take them, they make them immaculate. So yeah.
So I'm guessing when you drove it back from Gippsland that day, it was a sunny day because it doesn't have a roof, right?
It did. It's got a hard top. I just took the roof. I had the roof on at the time. Oh, okay. I've since taken the roof off and I've just stored it in my garage. So, yeah.
And have you changed the seats on it as well? The tan seats, it looks like, are they new?
No, they're original.
Oh, okay.
So they're just surprisingly in good shape. So, it's pretty good. It's fun.
You're right. It's iconic like the 911, and you've got a great color combination as well with the sort of green and the white wheels, isn't it? White wheels and the tan seats. It all comes together really well. And a good car to go side by side with the 911. You know what I mean? Two different cars, but still both iconic. Yeah.
Exactly. And people love the Landy. If you ever go driving in one of, they just attract a lot of attention. They're so accessible and people love them. Perfect combination.
Yeah. All right, Nick. We're actually over the hour. We've gone a little bit longer today, but that's okay. Anything else you want to tell the listeners before we end the podcast today?
Not especially, but I just like to thank you for the time and the chance to connect with you in this way. And it's great how a virtual community like this can actually be quite strong, and you can sort of feel connected even though we're a long way from each other.
Yeah, so. True. And like I said, this is the first time over all the years that, we're chatting and comments and little things over various social means. Is the first time we've actually met. So it's been good in that respect as well. But I always like your posts and you've always got a good style about you. All right. I think that's it. Thank you so much, Nick, for being on Owner Stories. It's been great chatting with you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. That was Owner Stories with Nick coming in from Melbourne. Honestly, Nick has he's had so many Porsches. He's really living the brand. And, you know, like I said, if you want to buy a 911 or you want to buy a Porsche, don't wait. Just get into your first one and the others will follow. All right, that's about it for today. Thanks for listening and bye for now.